Kafka and Dostoevsky are often thrown into the same box. Dark writers. Pain. Suffering. Existential dread. That's lazy thinking. They are not doing the same job at all. They look at the same human problem and walk in opposite directions. Dostoevsky believes suffering has meaning, even when it is unbearable. Pain is not random. It is tied to moral failure, inner conflict, or spiritual confusion. When his characters suffer, it is because something inside them is broken, divided, or dishonest. The suffering forces them to confront who they really are. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov doesn't fall apart because society catches him. He collapses because his conscience won't shut up. His punishment begins the moment he convinces himself he's above moral law. For Dostoevsky, suffering is the consequence of taking yourself too seriously as a god. Kafka believes suffering is meaningless, not in a dramatic way, but in a cold, administrative way. People suffer not because they did something wrong, but because the system exists. There is no moral lesson hiding underneath. There is no growth arc waiting at the end. In the trial, Joseph K. searches desperately for meaning in his arrest. He assumes logic must exist somewhere. Kafka's point is brutal. The search itself is the trap. There is no explanation coming. Dostoevsky says suffering teaches. Kafka says suffering just happens. This is where they permanently separate. Dostoevsky cannot remove God from the equation, even when he argues against him. God is the foundation of morality, guilt, responsibility, and redemption. When characters doubt God, that doubt tears them apart because something real is at stake. Without God, Dostoevsky believes moral boundaries dissolve. With God, life becomes terrifyingly demanding. Either way, you don't escape accountability. Faith is not comfort. Faith is pressure. Kafka's God, if he exists at all, is unreachable. No commandments. No replies. No clear judgment. The universe functions like a bureaucracy where the highest authority never shows up and never explains itself. Kafka doesn't rage against God. Rage assumes someone is listening. Kafka writes from the assumption that no one is. Dostoevsky's God watches. Kafka's God disappears. Dostoevsky believes humans are radically free, and that freedom is terrifying. You can choose evil. You can lie to yourself. You can destroy others and justify it intellectually. And you will still be responsible. His characters suffer because freedom exposes their contradictions. They want meaning without sacrifice, power without guilt, love without responsibility. Freedom forces them to face what they are capable of. Kafka believes freedom is mostly an illusion. You are born into systems you did not design, rules you do not understand, and expectations you cannot escape. You don't choose the game. You just play until you're eliminated. Kafka's characters don't make dramatic moral decisions. They comply, hesitate, explain themselves, and slowly disappear. Even rebellion feels scripted. Dostoevsky says, "You chose this." Kafka says, "Choice was never offered." This is where people misunderstand both. Dostoevsky offers hope, but it's brutal hope. Redemption requires humiliation, confession, suffering, and change. You don't get saved by thinking the right thoughts. You get saved by breaking down honestly. Hope exists, but it costs pride. Most people would rather suffer than pay that price. Kafka offers no hope, and that's not nihilism. It's refusal to lie. Kafka doesn't promise meaning because he doesn't see evidence for it. He doesn't give redemption arcs because real life often doesn't. What Kafka offers instead is recognition. The feeling of being lost, accused, confused, and powerless is not personal failure. It's structural. Dostoevsky says, "Endure and transform." Kafka says, "Endure and understand." That depends on the world you live in. Dostoevsky fits a world where guilt still burns, where moral failure feels personal, where God still haunts the mind. His work makes sense when people believe their choices matter deeply. Kafka fits a world of paperwork, surveillance, faceless authority, endless rules, and permanent anxiety. His work feels modern because modern life often punishes without explanation. If you believe suffering must mean something, Dostoevsky will feel like truth. If you feel crushed by life without knowing why, Kafka already wrote your case file. Dostoevsky looks at human suffering and says it is not an accident. He believes pain is tied to freedom, guilt, and moral responsibility. If you suffer, it is because something inside you demands confrontation. Redemption is possible, but only if you are willing to be crushed, humbled, and changed. His world is brutal, but it is meaningful. Kafka looks at the same suffering and refuses to lie about it. He shows a world where punishment comes without reason, where authority has no face, and where explanation never arrives. There is no redemption waiting at the end, no hidden lesson to justify the pain. There is only endurance and awareness. Dostoevsky says, suffering can save you, but it will break you first. Kafka says, you were never on trial, and yet the sentence stands. One judges your soul. The other erases it. Neither offers comfort. Both tell the truth.